You did everything right. You worked harder. You sacrificed more. You hit the goals. You chased the dream. And now, you're here. Maybe you got the job, the title, the car, the income, the praise. But something's off. A dull ache, a quiet emptiness, a voice whispering in the background. Why doesn't this feel like enough? Carl Jung had a name for this feeling, though he didn't call it success. He called it misalignment. The moment your outer life becomes disconnected from your inner truth, no amount of external achievement can satisfy you. Because success isn't the problem, the wound is. The part of you that believed achievement would fix something deeper, that success would silence the doubt, heal the pain, earn the love. But it didn't. You reached the top of a ladder, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. Jung believed that when you chase goals disconnected from your selfhood, you don't become fulfilled, you become fragmented. Because every unchecked ambition, every goal inherited from someone else, every version of success you borrowed from culture, family, school, society, takes you further from you. And that's the real tragedy. You're not just tired, you're spiritually misaligned. The world applauds you, but your soul isn't clapping, because somewhere deep down, you know the truth. You built a life that looks good on the outside, but doesn't feel alive on the inside. Jung warned us about this exact moment, the moment where the persona, the mask you show the world, grows so strong, so polished, so rewarded, that you forget who's behind it. You forget the child who never cared about money, the teenager who craved meaning, not status, the human who longed to be whole, not impressive. But now, you're impressive, you're successful, and still, you feel lost. Because success doesn't heal what you never acknowledged. It amplifies what you refused to face, that deep hunger, that ancient ache, that whisper, there must be more than this. And there is. But it's not out there. It's not in the next win, the next milestone, the next validation hit. It's somewhere you stopped looking a long time ago. Inside. That's where the real success lives. Not in your bank account, but in your alignment. Not in your resume, but in your resonance. Not in your title, but in your truth. And the first step to healing is admitting that something inside you hurts, that no number in the world will ever make you feel worthy until you stop confusing achievement with identity. The success wound doesn't begin in adulthood. It starts early, long before the job offers, before the grind, before you knew what achievement even meant. It starts with a question no one ever asked out loud. What do I need to become to be loved? As a child, love often came with conditions. Be quiet, be polite, be smart, be obedient, be exceptional. You learned quickly. Love isn't given freely, it's earned. And performance is currency. So you performed. You got the grades. You impressed the adults. You fit the mold. And each time you did, the praise hit like dopamine. A little spike, a little smile, a little hit of, I matter. But something darker crept in alongside it. A belief that your being wasn't enough. Only your doing was. And so you began the chase to be seen, to be valuable, to be enough. And with each milestone, the applause got louder, but the ache got deeper. Because no one told you, the self you buried to succeed will come back for you. Carl Jung would call this shadow work. The parts of you exiled in pursuit of approval, your creative instincts, your desire to rest, your hunger for truth, your messy emotions, your inner voice, all shoved into a dark corner because they didn't win. But that corner doesn't stay silent. It festers, it grows, and eventually it leaks into your life. You reach the top and it feels hollow. You get the award and you feel numb. You hit the goal and immediately raise the bar because stopping feels unsafe. That's not drive, That's wounded striving, a compulsion to prove yourself, to a standard you never defined. It's not that your ambition is wrong, it's that it's been hijacked by the idea that success equals safety. But it doesn't. Not when the definition of success was never yours to begin with. This is why so many high achievers feel lost, why they burn out, why they sabotage their joy. Because they're not chasing dreams, they're chasing healing. Not consciously, but deep down, they believe, if I just succeed enough, maybe I'll finally feel whole. But Jung teaches us, wholeness doesn't come from conquering the world. It comes from integrating the parts of you the world told you to hide. That's the real work. Not more hustle, more honesty, not more status, more self-recognition. And maybe for the first time, it's time to ask, what if you don't need to become more? What if you need to return to what you've always been? Not a product, not a performer, but a person worthy without earning it. At some point, the climb stops feeling like progress. It starts feeling like escape. You keep running, but not towards something, away from something, away from the fear that you're not enough, away from the silence that feels too honest, away from the questions you don't want to answer. And the worst part? From the outside, you look like you're thriving, you're admired, respected, envied even. But inside, you're exhausted, because no matter how far you go, you're not getting closer to yourself. You're just getting better at pretending you're okay. Jung believed that when the inner and outer worlds are in conflict, you can't sustain peace. Eventually the mask cracks, the smile falters, the emptiness shows, and that's when the real question emerges. What are you chasing that you hope will finally fix you? A title, a bank balance, a number on a screen, a nod from someone who once made you feel small? Success, in this sense, isn't the goal. It's the distraction, the performance that keeps you from sitting in the raw truth of your own worth. Because here's the painful truth no one wants to admit. The person who needs the most convincing that you're enough is you. And until you face that truth, no amount of achievement will land. You'll keep moving the goalpost, keep dismissing your wins, keep saying, it's not that impressive, because deep down, you believe you're not impressive unless you're performing. This is the moment where many burn out, not because they're weak, but because they've been running on a broken story. If I just keep going, I'll finally feel worthy. But you won't. Not if the worthiness never came from within. That's the success wound, an outer life built to cover an inner void. But here's the good news. The wound is also the way back. Carl Jung believed every wound holds a key, and that key is awareness. When you finally stop chasing, when you finally get quiet, you can ask the question that changes everything. What if I'm already enough and I just forgot? If this hits home, subscribe to Depthora and turn on notifications so we can keep going deeper into the truths most people run from. So what do you do now? You've chased, you've arrived, and it still feels hollow. This is the moment most people panic. They either double down, chasing even harder, or collapse into burnout and confusion. But Jung offered another path, a third way. He called it individuation, the journey of integrating all parts of the self, especially the ones success told you to leave behind. Because healing the success wound isn't about quitting your job or throwing away your goals. It's about reclaiming what those goals were covering up. You don't need to kill your ambition. You need to realign it. You need to ask, who is the one doing the chasing? And what does that part of me actually want? Often the answer isn't more money or fame or status. It's acknowledgement. It's safety. It's peace. Somewhere inside you, there's a younger self who believed love had to be earned, who believed being enough required proof, who thought becoming someone great would finally silence the pain. But that self isn't wrong. They're just unfinished. You don't heal that part by running faster. You heal by slowing down enough to listen. You ask, What parts of me have I abandoned to succeed? What values have I betrayed to be accepted? What truths have I silenced to stay impressive? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're the beginning of liberation. Because real success isn't found in achievement, it's found in alignment. The quiet knowing that who you are matches how you live, not perfectly, but honestly. And the more honest you become, the less performing you need. You stop chasing applause. You start listening for resonance. You stop seeking attention. You start living in intention. You realize you weren't broken. You were just disconnected. And reconnection doesn't require a spotlight. It requires a mirror. To see yourself clearly. To accept yourself fully. To live deeply. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents expected, not who your culture demanded, not who your younger self thought would be impressive, but you, whole, integrated, enough." And when you touch that place, the chase softens, not because the dream died, but because the dream finally became yours. Something shifts when you stop performing. At first, it's terrifying, because the applause gets quieter, the recognition slows. People might stop saying, "You're killing it." But that space they leave behind, that's where your real self starts to breathe. You begin to notice the difference between being admired and being understood. You start to crave depth instead of approval, truth instead of polish, meaning instead of metrics. And for the first time in a long time, you start asking a different question. What would it look like to build a life I don't have to escape from? Jung believed the journey toward wholeness always involves death. The death of the mask, the death of the illusion, the death of the version of you that was never fully real. But from that death, something more honest is born. A life rooted in your own values, your own voice, your own rhythm. Not what you were told to want, not what you were conditioned to chase, but what actually makes your soul feel alive. That might mean less hustle, less proving, less comparison, and more quiet mornings, unapologetic creativity, work that feels aligned, not just impressive. You might stop chasing titles. You might care less about going viral. You might even start saying no to things that once made you feel powerful, not because you're giving up, but because you've woken up. You're no longer willing to trade your peace for performance, your joy for validation, yourself for success. And that's the paradox. When you stop chasing success, you start becoming someone truly worth following, not because of the numbers, but because of the depth. People feel it, that calm, that clarity, that confidence that doesn't need to shout. Carl Jung would say this is the path of individuation, to reclaim your inner authority, to live as if your life actually belongs to you. And it's not always glamorous. It doesn't always come with trophies or trending posts, but it brings something rarer, satisfaction, not the kind you post, the kind you feel when you're alone and at peace. Because now you're not pretending. You're not proving, you're not running, you're rooted. And from that place, everything begins to realign. Your goals, your relationships, your creativity, your pace. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You remembered who you were before success became a substitute for self-worth. And you chose to build something deeper this time. Here's the truth they never taught you. You don't have to earn your worth. You already have it, but somewhere along the way, that truth got buried, under expectations, under performance, under applause. And so you chased, you built, you conquered, you won. But the more you achieved, the more the wound whispered, "Still not enough." That whisper wasn't weakness, it was a signal, a call back to the part of you that never wanted the performance, just the peace. Carl Jung would say, When the inner voice becomes louder than the outer noise, the path becomes clear. You hear it now, don't you? That voice that says, you don't have to climb every mountain. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to play a role that no longer fits. You can stop. You can breathe. You can choose again. Choose rest over rush, truth over image, depth over distraction. Because this is where healing happens. Not when you get there, but when you remember you were always here. Whole, worthy, enough. The success wound begins with forgetting that, and it heals when you come home to it. So ask yourself right now, what would your life look like if it didn't have to impress anyone? What would you build if it didn't need likes or claps or credentials? What would you pursue if peace, not praise, was your goal? Maybe you wouldn't climb so fast. Maybe you'd slow down. Maybe you'd smile more. Maybe you'd write, paint, walk, sit, love, breathe. Not to be seen, just to be alive. That's the work now. Not to escape the world, but to return to it as someone whole. And the next time you feel that ache, the hunger, the striving, the not enough, don't rush to fix it. Pause, listen, ask, whose voice is this? If it's not yours, you don't have to obey it. You're allowed to define success on your own terms. You're allowed to be still. You're allowed to be full without earning it. Because the deepest success is peace with yourself. And once you touch that, you'll realize you were never chasing success. You were always chasing you. And now, maybe, you've finally caught up.